Okay, guys. I had an audio problem, so I'm starting over. So, can someone let me know if the audio is fixed? I'm going to need to know if the audio is fixed. So, I'm going to wait until I hear from someone. All right. Is the audio fixed? Okay, I'm going to start completely over. And I really said a great story. So I'm going to just start over. I'm going to start over like, darn, it was a really good story I told you guys. So now that we fixed the audio, I just want to welcome everyone. I just finished doing a YouTube video premiere. And in the premiere was a clip, a 10-minute clip of a 6-hour seminar that I recently gave in Chicago called Healing the Inner Trauma Child, Understanding Trauma. And it is the most, I believe, the most comprehensive work I've done on trauma to date. Everyone knows that when I talk about self-love deficit disorder, I say that it is caused by attachment trauma. So if we think, and most therapists, when they work with someone with codependency or self-love deficit disorder or SLDD, they work with symptoms. They just work with the problems that people keep having. What I explain is SLDD or codependency is caused by attachment trauma, which is the condition, the experience of being raised by a pathological narcissist and a codependent. That is highly, highly traumatic. The abandonment, the neglect, the gaslighting, the abuse that most SLDs experience is just mind-blowing, painful. So painful that we can't remember it. So at the very foundation is attachment trauma. Attachment trauma creates core shame, a belief of being fundamentally broken or not good enough. From core shame comes this pathological loneliness, this bone-aching pain of just being alive, or existential emptiness. From the loneliness is the addiction, is this need to make the pain go away, and that is a choice to be in a relationship, and of course with a narcissist. And at the very top of the pyramid is being codependent or being an SLD. And the problem with traditional psychotherapy is everyone is working on the behaviors, the thinking, the problems, and it doesn't work. I have been providing therapy for SLDs or codependents my whole career, and it just doesn't work. Codependency or SLDD does not get better when you talk about surface issues. So I needed to create a therapy or treatment approach that would get to the trauma, the attachment trauma, that would lead to the resolution of the shame, the loneliness, and with the SLDD or codependency addiction. And from that would be the cure, the codependency cure. And that is when those codependent patterns or symptoms, they just change. So the trauma is the heart of the matter. And I want to tell you a story on how I discovered that the HITCH method. And it's really it's actually kind of freaky because no one taught me about codependency or narcissism in graduate school. And I went to a really good graduate school. I graduated from Boston University and I got my first job in Boone, Iowa. Talk about culture shock. That was no one, I love Boston, by the way, Beantown. I love Boston. So no disrespect here. But, people were, everyone in Iowa would smile and wave and just were so sweet and kind. And people in Boston, they're a little bit rougher. That's what happens when you get a lot of people together. But the point is, I got off track here, is that in graduate school in Boston, I was not prepared to work with narcissists. I didn't know anything about codependence, and I didn't know much about attachment trauma. So I got this first job in Iowa, and there was this woman, and I'm going to call her, and I keep changing her name, but we're going to call her Katie. And I was just doing what I thought was good therapy. I just talked to her about her problems and talked to her about her family history, and like one layer at a time. I was digging deeper and deeper into her background to get more information about why she was so scared and upset with her husband, who at the time was a narcissist, but I didn't even know narcissism that well to even label him one. And I would go, and it would ultimately become my paleo psychotherapy method, which, by the way, is discussed in detail in my 6-hour video, The Healing the Inner Trauma Child. So through this paleo psychotherapy, digging one layer at a time, I got her to tell me her stories of neglect and abuse and abandonment. And I finally got to her earliest memory when she was like 5, and all of a sudden her face changed. Her facial muscles changed. Her voice changed. Her voice had a sound of a child. Her posture changed. And she just started, her face turned red and her eyes welled up with tears. And it was like I was talking to a 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old was telling me about her abuse as if she was in it at that time. So, I mean, I was freaked out. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know what was going on. No one taught me that in graduate school, but because, I had to, there's a term, fake it till you make it. I think I heard that in AA. And that's kind of what I did. I was in it and I was not going to bail. So I stayed with her as if I was counseling a child. And then at the end of the session, like I was hypnotizing her, and I wasn't, I brought her back, into her adult self, and we ended the session. And then I didn't see her for 3 sessions. She had canceled 2 or 3 sessions in a row, and I had no idea why she canceled. And then she came back 3 weeks later, and she said something that completely freaked me out. She said, Ross, after that session, I was suicidal. I said, what? I was like, oh my God. She goes, yeah, I had this flood of all these memories of my trauma when I was a child and everything that, my narcissistic dad did to me. And it just came back to me and I didn't know what to do with it. And of course, I just gave her a really hard time for not letting me know. And then we talked about it. But she said, after 3 or 4 days later, she said she felt lighter and more calm. She said something happened when she started remembering those events, that she was able to make sense of her life. And that was what I call ground zero for my HITCH method. Back in 1988, with this woman, I stumbled upon this idea of how to go backwards in time, connect with the trauma child that they used to be, the inner trauma child, and heal the person in the moment, in this frozen memory, in this time, this memory was shut down. It was encapsulated. It was frozen, and it was put into another part of the brain. I had no idea that I got there. So, long story short, and it's a really long story, and it will be short, is that over the next 30 years, I developed this technique that would eventually become a healing the inner trauma child trauma resolution integration method. And that is what the video that's on my website, selfloverecovery.com, the HITCH method is all about. This is the 6-hour seminar video that I've been talking about. As I talk about how I solve codependency or self-love deficit disorder. I mean, it's very complicated, and many of you already know I have a 10-stage treatment program, and stage 7 is where I do the trauma resolution. But what I've come to understand is you cannot solve the human magnet syndrome driven relationship choice of the narcissist until you get to the hurt inner trauma child, the child that we carry inside. The problem or the challenge is she's invisible. We can't remember the trauma. Our brain created the safety mechanism that takes those trauma memories, puts them into another part of our brain, and locks the door. I accidentally found how to open that door 30 years ago in Iowa, and I have been perfecting this method. And so what I've come to understand is that, and I write about this in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, which, by the way, is this book, not, see if I have the other book. Well, it's this book, not the other book. I write about it, and I've been talking about this for a while, that the whole trauma pyramid is that if we're going to solve self-love deficit disorder or codependency, is we gotta like connect to the story that we don't remember, that our brain won't let us remember. And it's painful. And that is why I want to teach the world, both the general population, lay people, and psychotherapists, what needs to be done. And you don't need to be a therapist to buy this 6-hour seminar video, because if you're going to go to therapy and you have a good therapist, you need to know what's going on so you can share that with your therapist. And then your therapist, if she or he is good, will want to know, and then you can recommend my video. You can even lend them my video, for that matter, or tell them to read my book. But if you don't get to the trauma, if we don't give voice to that inner trauma child, if someone does not utilize my HITCH method, what happens is the automatic repetition of the human magnet syndrome-driven relationship template. And let me explain. When we're children, we survive. SLDs or codependents survive by figuring out a way to be the good child, the one that the narcissist will like more, will not get mad at, will not have narcissistic injuries. We become the trophy child, the pleasing child, the preferred child, or the good child, or maybe just the one that doesn't get beaten up. And that process of learning how to stay under the radar and not get hammered by the narcissist, it teaches us early on that our self-worth is by becoming invisible and taking care of someone. And that creates what I call the relationship template. And that crystallizes into our relationship preferences. So if you are an SLD, which means you have attachment trauma, core shame, pathological loneliness, and this addiction to narcissists, and you go on a date, you are going to paradoxically find the narcissist familiar and safe. I know that sounds crazy, but just check this out. If you know, if your earliest memories and most of your life, you know what to do with a narcissist, you know how to manage them, you know how to stay out of trouble, you know how to avoid their wrath, you know how to seduce you, get them to do something. That's what you know. And so if you meet someone, say it's on a date, Tinder or Match.com or wherever, and the person is really healthy, you won't know what to do with them. And paradoxically, they will get you nervous. They will make you feel insecure. You will think, well, maybe they won't like me. So the person who is an SLD, who has had attachment trauma, who has not been able to resolve their attachment trauma, they repeat the condition, which we call repetition compulsion, and some people call it, what's the word? Repetition compulsion and trauma bonding, is you bond over the familiar trauma. And that is the sick, sad, twisted reality of the human magnet syndrome, is we fall in love with the narcissist. They feel like normal. We connect to them like, oh my God, I feel and understand their pain. There's an intensity. There's this incredible, like, euphoric connection. And then the love and the limerence. So chemistry, now listen to this. Chemistry is the attraction of opposite attachment trauma. The narcissist, of course, has attachment trauma, and the SLD has attachment trauma because of how they survive the familiarity, the dance of the opposites. It's what I talk about in my human magnet syndrome. So I'm going to wrap this up, but what I'm talking about is, if we're going to solve self-love deficit disorder, if we're codependency, or we're a self-love deficient person or an SLD, and we want to stop the insanity of falling in love with a soulmate that ends up being our cellmate. We want to fix our broken picker. We want to be able to pick a self-loving person. Well, we have to become self-love abundant. We have to find out a way to solve self-love deficit disorder, which is caused by attachment trauma, core shame. And we solve it through my HITCH method. We solve it by understanding trauma. This 6-hour video that is available at selfloverecovery.com, it's just not about the technique. It's the technique in itself is 2 hours. By the way, in that video, I have almost 45 minutes of video footage of me with clients who gave me permission to show not only how the HITCH method is done, but its impact and its effect. But the other 4 hours of this video is about trauma and how it impacts self-love deficit disorder and how we cure that or solve it and move to self-love abundance. So if you are interested in growing past and finding your God-given right to self-love abundance, to heal this horrible self-love deficiency problem, you're going to have to find a way to get into your attachment trauma. And that cannot be done by regular therapy. So get this material, understand it, because I wrote it and produced it for the general public and therapists. Get it into the hands of your therapist, but understand it yourself, because a good therapist will take what you know and will run with it. All of my work, whether it's the human magnet syndrome, the codependency cure, or now the healing the inner trauma child work, is based upon fundamental psychological concepts. I didn't make anything up. What I did was I took all of these different theories and techniques and I packaged them up into a system of thinking, a theoretical framework that explains through 10 stages how to move forward from self-love deficit disorder to self-love abundance. And in specific with this Healing the Inner Trauma Child 6-hour seminar video that I hope you guys will consider purchasing at selfloverecovery.com, I explained for the first time how to do what most therapists don't know what to do. So thank you very much for allowing me to talk. And now I'm going to look at some of your comments. Okay. Any questions or comments? Wow. Tons and tons of comments. Hi, Erin. Hi, Jean Marie, Audrey, Sarah, Eve, Maya, Mike, Chelsea, Captain Rankin, Carol. You are welcome. You are welcome. You guys rock. I'm telling you, I love this stuff. I love this job. I am a living example of how this works. I am working my own self-love recovery program. And if anyone has been following me and they can watch my videos 3 years ago, or look at my I have the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts, you'll see that I am moving forward in this own program. And the deeper I get into self-love abundance and the more I heal my attachment trauma and my patterns, the more I can teach you guys. Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, I never get tired, Eve. Thank you. Eve said I changed her life. Oh, no, Eve said I've changed, more relaxed. Well, yeah, that's true. I'm just more comfortable with myself because I've been able to get into this attachment trauma stuff. And I'm like, thanks to, there's a psychic that I know that wrote this book called America's Psychic. Her name is Marla Fries. And I just read her book. And at the end of it, it talks about how she was able to forgive her mother, the narcissist. And long story short is I am finally at the point 5 years after my father died, where I'm ready to let go of the anger and to free myself up. Now, I am not saying that we must forgive the narcissist who hurt us. That's a whole video. That's a whole new concept. What I'm saying is I keep working on this stuff. I keep trying to get better because as I get healthier, I'm able to understand more so I can teach you more. So I'm so glad you guys are noticing that. Someone asked me, how did I know I had this trauma? I actually knew when I was 17 years old. I was hospitalized because of drug abuse. And I had a really good therapist that helped me realize how lonely I was. And I realized how much pain I had in my childhood. So I was blessed. It was a miracle that, that happened to me so early on in my life, and set a foundation for me to eventually go deeper and deeper as I got older. My dream interpretation, I actually have a video available at selfloverecovery.com on my dream interpretation. So go get that. Just go to selfloverecovery.com and check out my seminar videos. First of all, it's how I make a living, but what I have on YouTube is not the same as the seminar videos. The seminar videos are meant to be very, very clear, very specific, and they all come with comprehensive handouts so that you can have the stuff and read it and study it. The videos range from $40 to $125, and just to give you an idea of, if and 45 minutes to see me as a psychotherapist is $275. A 6-hour video that you can watch over and over again and study and try to absorb is $125, and I believe it's a good value. Again, selfloverecovery.com. Check it out. I also have like a retreat, a 3-day intensive retreat, which, by the way, is based upon my HITCH method. I've done 10 of these retreats so far, and by the end of the 3rd day, people are changed. I'm going to ask. I'm going to say goodbye now, because a part of my self-love recovery program is to do good things for myself. And tonight is my bowling league. Not bowling. That's the second time I've said it. I don't bowl. It's my pool league. Billiards bowl. And I love it. Wednesdays and Thursdays, I play pool. And it's one of the many things I've done for my self-love recovery program. So you guys rock. Thank you for your support. If you want to purchase my HITCH seminar, which was my 6-hour training that I had in Chicago, please go on selfloverecovery.com, or I have a 40% sale. Go to selfloverecovery.com. You'll get this book. I will sign it for you, and I will give you on an SD card my chapter 1 that's rewritten. I love you guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless, and be well.